So first little question that I got for you. How much power, I guess, or how much influence does student government actually have at UT?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. To be honest, I think we have a lot more power than I think most people realize. And I think a big part of that is that we've been able to build such good relationships with the university administrators, working with President Davis, working with Provost Imboden, Chancellor Zerwas, so many incredible people at the university. They've really opened up to us. And I think, they would say themselves that that's why they're here.
Mhm.
They're here to serve students, and us as student government, we're here to represent our 55,000 peers to the university. So it's a two-way street, but because of that, we've really been able to gain a lot of power and influence in the sense that we really are the ones voicing our opinions and the concerns of the students to the higher officials up in the administrative levels, and it's been a great working relationship.
Yeah, that's awesome. How close do you work with President Davis?
I work with him super closely, so I talk to him weekly for sure. We have reoccurring monthly meetings with him. He has really been a big mentor in my life, and I know in so many others' lives. And, going back to the relationship dynamic, it really has been an incredible two-way street to be able to work with him, field his different ideas, kind of give the student perspective on that, and vice versa.
Yeah. What are some of his like leadership styles, techniques, things that you've kind of picked up from him that you didn't have previously?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think one of the big things is he comes from a legal background. He went to UT undergrad, then Harvard Law, and I think because of that, he really looks at things very analytically. And, I've really grown to appreciate that fact and that component of him, and I think it's something I myself have tried to adopt. When you're looking at a situation, you really wanna look at it analytically, look at the pros and cons. I think he's really good at illustrating that, bringing those pain points to the forefront ahead of time before they become a bigger issue, and he's just really wise when it comes to big administrative decisions, and I think that's something I've tried to implement on my own team, is really understanding before we involve ourselves in something, especially a big ordeal, big event, what are the logisticals that we have to cover? And I think he's really shown that to me that that's an important, you know, that's an important component when looking at the situations. You wanna look at the small variables, in addition to the big things.
I know last semester the compact was like a really big kind of like
For sure.
hot topic on campus.
Yep.
And obviously UT, we got what 55,000 students, you
Yep.
said.
Yep.
A lot of variable like viewpoints, like full spectrum
For
is
sure.
shown. And so like what were some of the conversations, if any, that you engaged with President Davis and like how he approached it? Because obviously he wants to encapsulate, the ideals and the embodiment of UT as long as or as well as the students on campus. And so given how touchy of a subject that was, like, how did he approach that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. As you rightly said, I think there were so many varied viewpoints on that. It was a
Yeah.
very polarizing document. And I think in that sense, he was really trying to survey what do the students themselves actually feel? What do they believe? How does this help further the cause of the university? How could it detract?
Mhm.
And so he went from it from a very diplomatic standpoint, I think, and I really appreciate him for doing that. He really surveyed a lot of different student opinions. He really talked to a lot of different university administrators across the country. As you know, the compact wasn't just UT, it was a plethora of other universities scattered across the country. And I think because of that, he worked very closely with the other university presidents, formulating, okay, how can we most effectively work alongside the federal government while maintaining our own institutional autonomy? And I feel like he really navigated that well, but obviously in the moment, it was very contentious.
Well, oh, for sure. I mean, either way, and what was the final result? Did we end up signing it? Did we end up not signing it?
So there was a lot of
Yeah,
misinformation around
I
it.
I
It
actually
actually
forgot.
it was very confusing because the document itself wasn't something that you signed. It
Okay,
wasn't a legally binding contract.
okay.
It was more of an agreement, and obviously, I'm not the most knowledgeable on it, but
Yeah,
it wasn't really a binding contractual agreement. It was
right.
more just signing off to what the federal government was asking of universities.
Yeah,
And in the sense, actually, as it pertained to UT was already doing all the stipulations
right.
that the compact was asking for. So that, doctrinally and operationally, there's
Yeah.
no difference in UT one way or the other.
I heard a lot of student conversations around that, and I was like, "Well, to my knowledge, I thought we were doing all of this already."
Yeah,
I
no,
don't.
literally did everything that was already.
Yeah, so I was wondering, because I was a part of, Turning Point USA, and I technically still am, and so we were doing a lot of, like, tabling events and stuff, and we were talking about it, and I was just kinda like, you guys know, like, we're doing this stuff already, right? Like, it's not
Yeah,
it's kinda whatever, but no, it was kinda a hot button issue, and, I last time we didn't really get a chance to talk about that, and
for
it
sure.
kinda popped up, and I was like, "Oh, well, how does the president of one of the most prestigious universities in the world. How does he, navigate an issue
Yeah.
that can be that touchy?
And, I'll also add, he has an incredible cabinet of people.
Right.
The provost did an incredible job of navigating those kind of things. He has a great legal team. So, while he was the one sort of publicly making the announcement, he had a great team behind him.
Right. For sure, as all
Uh,
great leaders do.
for sure,
We don't have all the right answers.
for sure.
For you and the people that were kind of like in your cabinet and the people that you talked to and trusted about student issues and stuff, what was kind of their role? How did you go about delegating responsibilities? What was your relationship like with them?
Yeah, well, I think as we've been talking about with a university population of over 55,000 students, there's only so much bandwidth that I myself on a personal level have. So I wanted to really delegate responsibility to as many people as possible who are really proficient and really knowledgeable in their specific area. So practically, we have a bunch of policy directors who preside over their various policy sectors. And that's been really useful for me because these are students who are really passionate, really knowledgeable about their respective area, and can voice their concerns that they're hearing from students to me, in which case then I can go to the university administrators and voice those concerns from there. So to answer your question, it's a lot of different students doing a lot of different things over spread around a lot of different micro teams,
Mhm.
but it sort of all funnels up through student government. Everybody has their marching orders. Everybody knows what they're doing. So it's a very well-oiled run machine, but it's very disparate and kind of spread across campus.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that, you know, actual UT administration probably helps you set up a lot of that,
Oh,
says, "Oh, you need to appoint these people," or and all those things.
for sure.
Within that funnel, what were some of, like, the recurring student concerns that kept popping up?
Yeah, I think there's a few. One was student safety, specifically in West Campus. So West Campus, we have over 30,000 students,
Yeah.
congested in that tightly knit area. And student safety was definitely a big concern. So we struck a first ever agreement between APD and UTPD to have jurisdiction that UT Police Department can now safely patrol West Campus. And I think we've seen huge improvements in that area. Obviously, we have a lot more to improve upon in the safety dynamic, but I think that was a big concern that students had. I think another one is honestly job opportunity and job scarcity. I think in the emergence of AI in this digital landscape, there's a lot of uncertainty around jobs. One of my great joys this year has been to be able to talk with student leaders from across the country. I started my way at Yale, worked my way from the Northeast over to the West Coast. And there's a big commonality, whether at this prestigious Ivy League university or a community college, students are concerned about job placement and job opportunity. And I think that's a big thing we've been working on, especially in the entrepreneurial community. We really believe that we are at the nexus point of a paradigm shifting moment where entrepreneurship amongst students is really blooming and blossoming right now, especially in Austin and at UT. So we really wanted to elevate that. We wanted to connect students to alumni. So I think those are kind of the two big areas. And then the final third is loneliness and mental health.
Yep.
I think that's something that all of us as students struggle with. It's something that we all have to navigate, especially a university of our size. In many ways, it's sort of a sink or swim school. We're trying to alleviate that stress point by bringing students together physically.
Yep.
We're more digitally connected than ever before, but often the irony is that we've never been more isolated.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I guess we'll touch on kind of like the entrepreneurship side of things first. Obviously I'm in that community. Like I love what I do. I'm super entrepreneurial, and so are you. And so,
Mhm.
excited to see what you do, in the future with all of that and everything. But for me, it's like the that's the whole point of why I came to UT was because of the network. Obviously, we have a world-class education and, like, we'll talk more about, how students are viewing college nowadays because there seems to be, like, a pendulum shift, but for me, it was, UT is one of the largest brands in the world, point blank period, and so how could I step on UT's campus and leverage that brand for, opportunities in the future? Not so much career-wise, because again, I'm super entrepreneurial, but I think with all the AI stuff bouncing around and everything there, I think just a lot of students here at this university and universities across the country, I think they're just kind of like realizing, "Oh, I can go and employ AI, right? And I can go create my own kind of little market segment and be prosperous and be successful in that without having to depend on an employer who's probably gonna outsource the work to AI anyways."
For sure.
And so, like, what is obviously you've had a lot of conversations around that. What are some of the solutions? What are some of like the practical steps to actually help students with job placement?
Yeah, I think in relation to AI, I think a big thing just on the academic front real quick is we really need to integrate AI with academia.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that universities have been a little resistant to do because it's so unknown. But I think as the years go by, we're gonna increasingly see this confluence of AI in academia. And in my thesis is sort of that you can really get super far ahead, or you can use this kind of to supplement learning. And I don't think that's what needs to be done.
Mhm.
I think this is an elevating tool, just like the iPhone was, just like the steam powered engine was back in the day, right?
Yeah.
This is a huge innovational nexus point that we're at. So how are we going to get ahead and use it as a tool?
Yeah.
So as far as job placement, I think while AI is gonna take a lot of jobs, I mean, the Anthropic report just came out, pretty alarming, I think, for a lot of students. I think on the flip side, it's actually gonna create and open up a lot of new jobs. I'm not super doomer on AI yet.
Yeah.
I feel actually pretty exciting about it. But that is to be said that I think students need to become more interdisciplinary now. I think there's gonna be a lot of the brain powered jobs might be taken away by AI. So now interpersonal skills I think are gonna be elevated. You talked about networking. I think increasingly being able to network, I think to be able to sell things, I think just the human to human interaction is only gonna be increasingly elevated, which I think for people like you and I is really exciting.
Right.
And I think it's one of those things that regardless of if you're an engineering student, a liberal arts student, whatever you are, I think to be able to exercise your human to human interaction skills, I think that's gonna really be the future of job placement.
Yeah, and on top of that, yeah, you gotta be able to talk to people, you gotta be able to position yourself within groups of people, but, I mean, it still comes down to skills, right?
It
Like,
does,
the people that we see getting hired to, like, jobs that everyone's always been getting management consulting or engineering or whatever, it all comes down to skills, and so it's still
for
the
sure.
highest lever that you have is your skill set because companies are still companies would rather overpay for A players as opposed to underpaying for 3 B players, and so if you can just develop enough of a skill set to become an A player, well, then your job's not gonna get replaced because, you're more skilled than, 70% of your field or
For sure.
80% of your field, and so I think that's what it really comes down to. I know we talked about this, but you kinda touched on it a second ago, like, technological advancement and things like that. How I view AI is same way of the Industrial Revolution, right?
Mhm.
It's literally, before the Industrial Revolution, I think it was like 80% of America were farmers. After the Industrial Revolution today, 3% of America is farmers. And so it's not that, to your point, it's not that AI is going to replace jobs and people will be out of work as a result of it. It's going to replace jobs and then people are going to have to develop a new skill set and adapt. And I think
Sure.
we do that anyways. And so I'm not super doom and gloom on AI. At the end of the day, like the people working on AI are smart enough to know that like it's not good to have a bunch of people running around unemployed. So, like,
Yeah,
I
I hope so. I
I
hope
think
so.
I think that's the ultimate thing, because otherwise, people already do crazy stuff, and so
For sure.
yeah. I don't know, it's just the whole AI thing is interesting to me.
It is.
Most of the population doesn't even really know how to use it outside of, like, opting it for Google.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
For sure. Interesting times.
Yeah, definitely is, man. So when you're working with students and stuff on campus, because that's your job, you talk to them all
For
the
sure.
time. And so with UT specifically, what are some of the things that administrators and faculty are actually doing to like work with the students on the job placement stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. So, practically, there's different technologies I think the university is trying to implement. 1220 is one of those. It's literally
Mhm.
an app where you input your different job, your resume, your different jobs that you previously had, your internships. And it's sort of the idea is it matches you to different possible career outcomes. You get different job listings. There's a lot of different websites, obviously, and apps that the university employs. I think more practically too, at the organizational level across UT, we have over 1,200 orgs. I think those are actually even the more prominent feeders into jobs. We have so many incredible consulting orgs, investment banking orgs, venture capital orgs, whatever you want to do. There's an org for that, and I found that's more grassroots. It's more organic as far as how you get job placing.
Mhm.
And I think the best way my piece of advice to students is always find a few mentors who are 1 or 2 years older than you at UT. That's what I did. I came to this university quite literally had never met a single UT student or alumni, and I really got plugged in, to my Christian fraternity, met some older guys who had already been in various different orgs across campus, and that's how I learned about all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people really need to do. I always say become very comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's the big takeaway I've had from college is that you need to constantly be pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And I think the only way to do that is to apply yourself to as many orgs, network as much as possible, just get out of your room and start meeting as many people as possible.
UT is just such a big school, man, and it's
Sure.
like if you're looking for something, it's there. But that's the thing is most students step on UT's campus and they're like, "Holy crap, this place is huge."
Yep.
And then they just get psyched out and they're like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna go to class and then,
For sure.
I'll meet a couple people and that'll be it."
Uh,
And in a lot of different seasons, I've been that way too. Um kind of by design, but in large part just because, yeah, sometimes it is a little bit overwhelming, and so, we get a lot of I get a lot of college students, high school students who watch the podcast and stuff, and so it's like if you're looking for something, you just have to go find it,
you do.
because it's there.
Yep.
What do you say to the high school student right now who is strongly considering not going to university because of all of kind of the negative stigma around it?
Yeah, quite frankly, that's my youngest brother. His sort of debating going to college. He's very entrepreneurial. He's just ready to start his own company. He's actually already been doing that. What I tell him and what I tell other people his age, the value of your degree, yes, it is a piece of paper. You do become credentialed, and that often is how you get a job. I think in my experience, and it sounds like for yours too, my great value add that I've had by coming to UT is the network, is the people, is meeting peers like yourself, right? Who I'm going to have this incredible network of people who 5, 10 years from now, I know are going to be doing incredible things. And so hopefully in the future, I can team up with those people and do that. And I think university is a very special time where you get this 3, 4 year period where you're a young adult, you're navigating life, and you have this space to really figure out, okay, what is it that I'm passionate about? And you can see people alongside you who are aspiring to those same things.
Yeah.
I don't really think you're going to get that anywhere else.
Yeah.
I think it's very unique. And it really is a privilege to come to university. I mean, that's why you have billions of people around the world who would quite literally kill to be in my position, in our position. And I think sometimes in the United States, we have it so good, we forget how much of a blessing and privilege it is to be in higher education. But I do think, to your point, it is what you make of it.
Yeah.
So you definitely could have the hypothetical student where all they do is go to class for a few hours a day, and they're in their room studying, doing whatever.
Yeah.
I honestly think you're right. That's probably a waste of time. You could probably just get an online credential and be on with your day. I think in order to make it worth it, you gotta go all in, you gotta apply yourself, and you gotta become uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the person, and so I'm not anti-college. I think I have a mixture of, like, I take kind of like the Dave Ramsey approach on college,
Mhm.
where if you're gonna go to college, I think for the vast, vast majority of the American population, you should go to college.
Yeah.
Reason why is because I'm a big believer in skills, as I've already talked about.
Yep.
College gives you an opportunity to get a couple skills and put them in your tool belt.
Mhm.
There's a lot of problems with how that looks, though. One, college is too freaking expensive, for one.
Yeah.
And so the trade-off is, okay, are my skills that are gonna land me a $60 or $70,000 a year job, is that worth me potentially going in, maybe even $100,000 worth of debt, $200,000 worth of debt to go pursue, right? And so for me, I think my approach is if you're going to go to college, it's probably a good decision, but go to the best college that you can reasonably afford. And so for me, it was like, when I was growing up, I wanted to go play basketball at Stanford. Um, had I, gotten an opportunity to go walk on in Stanford like I did here, I still would have walked on here because Stanford would have been an arm and a leg, right? The same thing with Princeton or Harvard or whatever. Now, if you get to go to one of those schools on a full ride, cool, go do that. But if you're gonna have to pay for school, which most people do,
For
if you're
sure.
gonna have to pay for school, then no, you should go to like the best in-state school that you can go to.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, Texas is like, it's Texas, dude. Why?
Yeah, I would say to that point, I do have some friends who went to Ivy League schools for undergrad. I think the educational experience you get here is better.
Yeah,
Like,
I
just
mean, how
full
could
stop. I think you
yeah.
meet so many more people. The networking here, because we're at a bigger school, the networking pool is just so much vaster, and I just think you have, opportunities here that you wouldn't get anywhere else. But I know I'm biased to specifically UT, but I
We
just think
both are.
it's the greatest school in the world.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's awesome. And like, I love UT. It's reasonably close to home. It's not crazy expensive. Like,
Mm.
I'm not going into a ton of debt over my education. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I'm getting what I paid for. And so it's like but for me, the thing that I'm anti about college is
Yeah.
anti lying about why you're there. And so for me, it's education is great. The classes and the skills and the things that you do in your classes are awesome. But for me, like I said earlier, I came here for the brand. I didn't come here for, necessarily like what I was going to be talking about in my class day to day. I came
For
here for the
sure.
brand and I came here for the networking, and that's great. But a lot of people come to college because their parents want them to do it and they want to, drink and party and, have fun with their friends and get the college experience. Hear that thrown
Yeah.
out a lot. And so I'm not anti-college, I'm just anti-lying about why you're there. If you
Yeah.
wanna go into debt so that you can drink and smoke and party with your friends, then just be honest about that. Like, there's no shame in hiding it because guess what?
Sure.
Out of 55,000 students, 10 or about 10,000 of them students are doing the exact same thing as you. And so, like, cool, just be open about it, but, like, let's tell the truth how
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
because if you're a, you know, French literary studies major or something like that,
Uh-huh.
well, you're gonna be a high school English teacher, and that's okay.
Yep.
Like, my girlfriend's gonna be a high school English teacher.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no bashing on them.
Yep, yep.
But it's like, yeah, just don't lie about why you're there. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm totally with you on that. And I think I just remember coming to UT in the first week, I just couldn't get over my excitement because here I am walking, you have petroleum engineer students, you have chemical engineering students, you have English students. It's just insane how much opportunities here. And the beauty is, with the core curriculum, you can really take classes in all these different fields.
Yeah.
I know, I think I don't know what the exact stats are, but I think the average student changes their major 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
And that's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what other stage of life you can get that opportunity.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think for most people I was actually strongly debating on if I didn't go to college to play basketball, because obviously I was recruited here to play, and so had I not gone to college to play basketball, I don't know that I would've, but that's me. That's not me telling anyone to not go to college.
Yeah,
Like, for most people, it's still the right decision.
yeah,
But, it's up to you guys. Depends on who you are.
for sure.
And so, we're 21, 22 years old, whatever, like, don't take our advice.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Right, for that.
yeah, let's see how this turns out first. Right, right. So for you, leadership style, working with all these different people, how is your faith intertwined in that? How has that kind of shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to who I am. I couldn't imagine a world in which, I was on this earth and Jesus is in my life.
Mhm.
And so for me, quite frankly, I think it's one of those things where I only have the bandwidth I have because the Lord has given me a platform. It's not mine, it's His. And, I'm always reminded of that one verse, "To whom much is given, much is expected." And there's a lot expected of us. I think as students, as people born in the United States, we really have this elevated platform that much of the world doesn't have. And so I think the question for us is, how are we gonna use that to be a light in this dark world? Because it's not about you or I. That's a very surface level selfish endeavor if it is.
Mhm.
And so I'm constantly asking myself and asking the Lord, in prayer, "Lord, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do today? How can I be a light on campus today?" And that's just sort of the existential question I always ask myself and I ask the Lord. And the Lord has been so faithful. I mean, I have story after story of God just completely transforming my life in miraculous ways while in college and before. And I just, would say to all the listeners out there, go all in because Jesus is worth it. He's transformed my life. And I'd also say, get serious about prayer.
Mhm.
Prayer has fundamentally changed my life. I read this book called Dirty Glory by Pete Gregg. In that book, it's the guy he started the 24/7 prayer movement around the world, and just the stories in that book really motivated me to start praying. I have a lot of crazy stories that came out of that, but he's fundamentally transformed my life. So without a doubt, it's changed my life.
Yeah, I think it's for me, we've known each other for a couple years now.
Sure.
Like it's been really cool to see how the Lord has blessed your life. It's been great to see how the Lord has changed and blessed my life in so many different ways because if you'd have told me that this is what my life would have looked like walking into college, I'd have been like, "No, you're
Yeah.
crazy, dude. No, I'm hooping in March Madness right now is what I'm telling you." And so no, it's been awesome because I think through all of just the difficulties and just everything you go through as a college student with all the pressure that we have being students at the University of Texas, because there's a lot that comes with that. Um, I think Jesus is the only constant in that. And so with that being said, do you feel like, because I've definitely seen it, what are your thoughts on you know, the Christian faith sweeping through campus. Like, have you seen that? Have you felt it? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think we are undergoing a spiritual revival right now. The Lord is on the move. And I just think our generation, I think we both feel this, that there's something special going on, that there's this move of the Holy Spirit across our campus, I think across the United States right now, that is contagious, that students are really waking up. My thesis on it is that I think we've lived our whole lives in this postmodern, very secular age. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, where that certainly was the case, where if you were a Christian, I mean, you were a weirdo.
Yeah.
And so, I think even coming to a place like Texas that is steeped in cultural Christianity, I think you're starting to see the move of the Lord really convict the hearts and minds of students here, where Christianity is not just some box we check off. This is a full life dedicational moment where you are all in. We have to carry our cross daily. We're approaching Easter here, and I'm really cognizant of that fact that our Savior literally walked the walk. He came down as a human and died on the cross for us. And it really is inspiring for us and challenging to us that we ought to do the same in a similar sense that we need to lay our lives down. We are the Lord's servant, and we need to go out and make disciples of all nations. And I think you're starting to see that conviction in our generation. And I think we're going to look back in history and see that this is a pivotal moment,
Yeah.
that the Lord is doing something special in our generation for such a time as this. I'll share a quick story. I recently was in the Middle East. I got to go to the UAE and Israel. And I remember on the very last day, I was one of the only Christians on the whole trip. There were about 40 of us students from the most prominent universities across the country. And on Sunday, these Jewish students were begging me to take them to a church in Jerusalem, in the old city square. And the pastor was a Messianic Jew, so a Jew who had become a Christian. And many of those students' lives were changed forever. And they said on that trip, we met different presidents of throughout different countries around the Middle East. It was an incredible trip, but more so than that, they said that they just could not believe about this Jesus thing and how it transformed their life. I had legitimate students telling me their lives were forever changed after that trip because of those conversations we had. So I would just say there's something incredible going on around the world, and I feel that geopolitically and internationally, something big is happening, and it's far outside of ourselves. So we have to ask ourselves, we get one line in the play. What is our line gonna be, and how are we gonna give glory to God?
I love that phrase from you, bro. Like, we get one line in the play.
Uh,
That is that is awesome. And like, dude, praise God that like that whole experience
Dre
happened and everything like that. How was that? Like walking it where Jesus walked and like being in that
yeah.
environment?
It was pretty surreal. Honestly, the first day, I felt incredibly underwhelmed, to be honest, and I think that's actually a feeling a lot of people
Yeah.
are gonna get because you realize just how human it is.
Yep.
You walk around, somebody will point out, "Yep, this is where we think Jesus was before Pontius Pilate," and it's just this sort of dilapidated building, and you're looking at it, you're like, "This just feels a little too real for me," especially someone who has grown up Christian. So the first night was actually pretty bizarre because I felt incredibly underwhelmed. I almost had a crisis of faith moment a little bit where I was sitting there 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, just really on my knees asking Lord, "Lord, help me because I'm feeling a little underwhelmed here. Is this thing real?" The second day, we went down into the old square in the old city Jerusalem, and it was Shabbat on Saturday where the Orthodox Jews gathered together to do their worship, and I was the only Christian there, and all of a sudden, I felt this real spiritual heaviness over that whole place. You feel a spiritual heaviness over that city, and I was really susceptible to it, and my heart just really broke for the people there, and I felt that the Lord is really wanting to do something special in that place for those people and for the world. We believe that Jesus is gonna reestablish his kingdom in Jerusalem, and the weight of that really hit me. And then the next day was Sunday, which was so far to this point in my 22 years of life was the greatest day of my life where, all the students wanted to join me at church, and we had a huge outbursting of the Holy Spirit. People were praying in tongues, people were prophesying. It was I had some prophetic words spoken over me. It was really surreal, and I felt that we were really on the front lines in the spiritual warfare. It was a pretty bizarre and surreal feeling.
Praise God, dude. That's awesome. That's
I
awesome, man.
appreciate that.
Um, to you and your faith and our faith and your understanding of it, what is the difference between religion and relationship?
Oh, I think it's fundamental. I think that is a huge distinction that we need to be making because in my opinion, religion is really worthless. just going through the motions, being a cultural Christian, signing a box. That doesn't mean anything. We have a God who, for some strange reason, gave us free will to freely choose him and vice versa. And so it's a two-way street. It's like any relationship. In order to have one, you have to maintain that. And you have to willingly work alongside the other person. And I think the crazy thing about God and a personal relationship with him is that he is so ready and wanting to have a relationship with us. It's up to us though. Do we want to choose to go along with that? I'm reminded of Paul. He's constantly saying, run the race, finish the race. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Do not abandon the faith. And that's because we serve a God who loves us with all of his heart, that he was willing to die for us. But it's sort of a strange paradox, I believe, that he doesn't want to force himself on us, that he wants us to willingly go to him. And so in that sense, I just would encourage the listener, go all in and you will never be disappointed. And I think it's a challenge for you and I as well. As I'm speaking, it's am I doing enough? Am I really working with him? Am I really going to prayer? Am I interceding with the Spirit? God is a very gracious God, so he understands we are fallen human beings. But I think on the same token, he wants us to be this perfect being that he's created us to be. And he's trying to mold us and create us into that being. So are we going to be used by him?
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I think a lot about my journey in faith and how that's looked and the ups and the downs and, me being on fire for a season and then me being super lukewarm for another season. And um, I think in the last maybe year and a half, I've started to let go of the actual tangible things that I'm doing because there's nothing that I can do to earn my way
Yep.
into heaven.
Yep.
Like, and it's had to people need to get reminded more than they need to get taught, and so it's been hit me over the head for the last 2 years,
For sure.
and so I'm very grateful, we talked about this last time where, uh, my parents were worried about me coming to Austin and being coming back and being blue hair and, wild and all this crazy stuff, and, they say that jokingly, but that's, like, a concern that a lot of people have, like, a lot of parents have, and so, especially if you're raised as a Christian, because you hear these stories of a lot of kids who are raised in, religious households, and then they leave the house never to be found again, and so it was pretty scary for, I think, my parents, like, giving that control over to God, but once I got down here, it was crazy, man. Did I ever tell you about the first time I visited church in Austin?
No.
Bro.
Was it crazy?
Oh, brother. All right. Here's a good story for you.
Yeah,
So,
it is.
a little bit of backstory. I'm from Dallas. For most of my life, I've gone to First Baptist Church in Dallas, downtown. Great church, great pastor, Dr. Robert Jeffress. A little bit old school for me, but great church nonetheless. Very biblically based. And so, I get down to Austin. First couple weeks, me being down here, it's in the summer. I'm working out with the basketball team. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to church. Start Googling churches. I found First Baptist Church of Austin. And so, because the names were similar, I'm thinking, okay, give me a little bit of taste of home. Like, I'm going to go check out this church. Maybe it'll be my new church home. I get there for the early service. Pretty old building, older congregation. I'm like, okay, this looks somewhat similar to my thing. I go and I sit down. I'm the youngest person there by far. The choir's warming up. Everything feels,
For sure.
everything looks good. But then I start feeling like I get this like pit in my stomach, and I'm like, what is that? Because I've never felt that before. And guy walks in, and he's wearing something that I can only describe as like a rainbow sash. Yeah, and he starts and he kind of gallivants towards me and I see him coming and I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's talking about how the rainbow is a symbol of God's promise, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Uh-huh.
Giving him the benefit of the doubt. And so he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, never seen you here before. How are you?" Nice guy. And I'm shake his hand. "Hey, how are you? Name's Jackson Prince. I'm a freshman here at UT. I'm on the basketball team, da da da." And we get to talking and he goes, "So where'd you go to church before?" And I was like, "Yeah, First Baptist Church in Dallas." And he goes, "Oh, well, this is going to be very different than what you're used to. We practice more of an open theology here." He goes, 95% of our church staff is openly gay. Most of our church congregation is openly gay. And so, I invite you to stick around. And, if you feel something tugging at your heart to open up your theology a little bit more, then I think that would be great. And I go, with all due respect, I think my theology is open enough. I appreciate you. Have a nice day. And I bolted out of that church. I was like, "Man." Um, and I was just shocked, like,
Uh-huh.
and I go back home, I go back to my apartment, I'm laying in bed, and I'm like, "Man, I'm never gonna find it. My parents were right, Austin is crazy, I'm never gonna find a church down here."
Uh-huh.
And now I'm a proud covenant member at The Well,
Yep,
which is an incredible
great
church family,
church.
church community.
Yep,
Thank God, because I was pretty hopeless
for
in that
sure.
moment, I was scared.
Well, you know what, I think you raise a good point in the sense that, each and every city is very unique and very different. And I think too, the parent question, the parent worry is, that's kinda how I think whether you like it or not, at some point, you're gonna have to do it on your own. It's not your parents' religion, it's yours. So you have to start to make critical worldview decisions on your own. And I think being exposed to a city with a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different ideologies, I think personally is a really healthy thing because it establishes, okay, what do I actually care about?
Mhm.
You get to be on the front lines, and there's a lot of spiritual warfare here, I mean, without a doubt,
Yeah,
but that's kinda where I wanna be. I wanna be on the front lines here.
yeah.
I wanna be a light, and everybody is trying to find an answer. Those people just alongside us, we're trying to find truth here, and I think the big thing is, how it goes back to prayer and really being with the Lord.
Yeah.
And this goes back to having an actual relationship where He's gonna help us give discernment and really tug at our heart, "Okay, what is right and wrong?
Yeah.
And how can I discern those things?" And I do believe the Lord will give us answers.
I totally agree. One stat that I've just experienced, and this isn't like piece of paper, done studies, whatever, but one thing that I've noticed since being here in Texas is that every semester that I've been here, someone has committed suicide.
Yeah.
And so that like really breaks my heart because I think that in a lot of ways, yes, we do see this like revival, but then there's just as much of people hurting and people needing something concrete,
Yep.
and people needing something that they can believe in because man, like, you never know what someone's going through, you
For
know?
sure.
And so I just really pray for the students of UT to, like, find God and understand that, like,
Yep.
you being here is a blessing. Like, there's 1 in 400 quintillion chance that you are who you
For
are.
sure.
And so that's beautiful, and I think that people just need to realize that and that God created them in their image.
Yep.
How have you? Because obviously that stuff comes back to you, and so, not that it's your fault, but, like, you hear about it, and
No, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, how are like, what is your response to that when people come up and talk to you about that?
Yeah, first it breaks my heart. Each and every one of those people is an intrinsic and valuable member of our community.
Mm,
So to see somebody go down, we just hosted the vigil for the shooting that happened on 6th Street.
yeah,
Um, and so, to see an individual member of our community, go down is a huge loss that we're never going to recover from in one sense, because each and every person is eternal and there's never going to be somebody like that. And so, my first thought is it breaks my heart. I know it breaks the Lord's heart even more. My second thought, kinda what you brought up, is the fact that it should give us a sense of urgency, I think, as Christians that, it's not about us, that there's a whole wide world out there that we gotta be going out and being a light for, and so whenever I get sort of down or if ever I'm thinking about myself a little too much, moments like that really put in perspective that, "Hold up, life is very finite on this side of eternity. It's a lot shorter than we think, so we gotta get serious." I wanna be a warrior for Christ. I want Him to send me, and that's really my continual prayer, Lord, is, "Lord, I'm yours. Send me where you want me to go." I'm reminded of Abraham. God told him to leave his home country and to go to this random foreign land, and he did it. Then He promised him that he would have a son. He waited 25 years for that.
yeah,
I'm reminded of Joseph in the Bible. God told him, "You're gonna be the second most prominent and powerful person in all of Egypt." He waited 13 years in prison. So, I think there's a few things. One is reminding ourselves that we need to be vessels of light in this dark world. And I think we also need to remind ourselves that the Lord, if we truly ask Him to put us in situations, He will do so. And it may be on His timing and not ours. And we have to have the patience. And I think ultimately that's what faith is. Faith is believing in something that we hadn't seen yet.
yeah,
It's that Hall of Fame, Hall of Faith chapter in Hebrews, right? Where they just go through all the different people in the Bible that God promised them something. They didn't even see it in their lifetime, but they went to their deathbed believing that the Lord would prosper and reign true
mhm,
in their relationship. And I believe the Lord wants to do that with us.
yeah. Maximize your one line in the play.
For sure.
That's it, dude.
For sure.
Bring it back to kinda your role at UT, academics, all that stuff. What is something that college administrators, the people who run these prominent universities, what do you think are some things that they should be working on in terms of student concerns?
Well, I think they're doing a lot of things. I think one of them I already mentioned is job placement, making sure that we have a robust, system to really connect students to jobs. I would love to, in an ideal world, see, I think, maybe a more efficient pipeline system at different companies. A place like UT, we actually have a really great we have a lot of great opportunities because of how big our name brand is. We literally have companies waiting in the wings to hire students. I'll give you a prime example. I flew out to New Mexico pretty recently to watch a world record liquid rocket that our team of students and engineers are gonna be launching. We're actually beating USC for the world record for that, which I'm super pumped about. But that's a prime example, like, SpaceX and NASA have literally hired all of those students already.
Nice.
And that's, I think, going back to the org component of these students join an org. Yes, the org was very hard to get into. Yes, they have a lot of tangible hard skills, to your point, but the university is really connecting them to different job opportunities. I would love to see that more broadly across the university, but I know the university is working on that. I think alumni relations is something I'm always pushing for. We have over 600,000 Texas X's. How can we connect those to our to our current students? Some smaller universities have an easier way of doing that because it is smaller. I think at university of our size, though, we have a lot of advantages that smaller schools don't have because of how big our network is. I just was recently speaking to a Fortune 500 CEO who graduated from UT, and he was emphasizing to me the UT network, the Longhorn network, is the best in the world. Use it. It's changed my life. I know it's going to change yours. So it's kind of a calling card for all of us as students. Really maximize that. And then, I think finally, we've been talking a lot about it. For me, entrepreneurship. I think it's been too long since we've had a Michael Dell. I want another one. I want 20 more.
Yep.
My goal, I really want us to surpass Silicon Valley. I want us to surpass Stanford and Cal as really the preeminent hubs of innovation. We have the talent, we have the star power here. Austin's an amazing city. It's the emergent city in the country, in my opinion. Let's use that. Let's build this momentum and let's change the world.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I think the one thing that I am seeing with as far as the star power category, the one common theme I'm seeing with that is just agency. It's just saying, okay, my future, the best predictor of my success is what I do today. And so, how can I maximize my experience here at UT, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or, all the way to a doctorate, right? How can I maximize those years of my life in order to, create the best possible chance of an outcome? Um, and so on the flip side of that, for students who are not getting the jobs that I feel like they want, um, is some of that come down to job market and those things? That's probably a factor, but at the end of the day, if you are highly skilled and you have a high degree of agency and you have a high degree of competence and will and drive, I don't think there's any excuse why any student at the University of Texas could not land, in their desired career field. And so I do think I actually did not used to feel like this, but now after seeing it and talking to guys like you and actually talking to professors on campus, we just did an episode with Dr. Matt Bowers, the head
Oh,
of
nice.
sports management.
Yep, yep.
I'm talking to him and I'm like, no, no, these students have every opportunity that they need. They just got to go do it. And
Yep,
especially with the entrepreneurial blood, dude, like
yep.
there's no reason why you can't even start your own thing. Obviously, everyone here is highly competent. So,
For sure. To your point, there's just so much opportunity here. It can be a little discombobulating,
yeah.
and so my heart does go out to students and ourselves for that. But that's a really good problem to have. If that's our worst problem, that we have too much opportunity, we had a pretty stinking good.
Steak is too buttery, my lobster's too juicy. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
funny. Uh,
But yeah,
awesome, dude. Well, dude, I think it's been really cool being your friend for so long, and I think
thank
it's
you
really
likewise.
cool seeing the growth that you've had. Obviously you being in a pretty high powered student position here at the University of Texas. Um, for you, because I know more about you personally than a lot of folks do, and so when you are tasked with representing groups of students who may not share your beliefs on a certain issue, how do you go about weighing those scales? Because at the end of the day, you are in an elected position, and your duty and your responsibility is for the students and for your constituents, I guess. Um, but but you do have your own kind of viewpoint on things, and so how do you
Uh,
balance that?
yeah, I think it's a fun line. I mentioned I've kind of sort of experienced the full political spectrum, I feel. I grew up in Seattle, probably most progressive place in the country alongside Portland and maybe
Mm,
San Francisco, and then moved to Dallas my senior year of high school, which is definitely more conservative. And then Austin's sort of middle ground for me in between those two polarizing spectrums. And what I found the commonality is most of these contentious issues, most people agree on a lot of the stuff. It's just maybe these surface level issues or certain components of a given topic that people really disagree on. So my job as a student leader is really how do we ensure compromise where the maximum utility is really met, where both parties feel comfortable? Of course, it's not always going to happen. And in those situations, you do have to make a gut decision where I've been elected as an official to make a decision. And sometimes I have to make a hard decision
yeah.
where I'm doing what I feel is right. And if people disagree, obviously don't vote me in.
Yeah.
Um, but to
You're just the final kind of.
Yes, but to be fair, I really am cognizant that I wanna serve my constituents as best as I possibly can. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm here to serve the students and to voice their concerns to administrators. So whether that is for things I agree on or disagree on, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible in the sense that I'm presenting to administrators what I feel that students are genuinely concerned about. Whether that's a very left-leaning thing, a very right-leaning thing, or a more centrist position, my job is to understand, to field those positions and opinions, to work with students to understand, okay, how can we move forward if we have two very disagreeing opinions? And how can we make sure that both parties, even if they're not fully satisfied, how can we make sure at the very least they've been heard and understood and their opinions have been voiced to the university? So that's really my goal.
Yeah.
Even if I vehemently disagree with somebody, my goal is I want to present their opinion and understand their opinion even better than my own.
Right.
Because that's the only way we can progress and move forward as a school.
You have to.
Mhm.
I don't think like me, I'm conservative, and so it's like, I'm conservative, free market capitalist, whatever. But if I'm wrong about something, I would like to know.
For sure.
Like I think that just makes sense.
It
Like
does.
you should be able, like someone should be able to come to me, disagree with me, and and let's talk about it. And like I've changed my views on a lot of things
Yep.
that I used to be wrong about, and so like I'm open to being wrong. I know you're open to being wrong, and sometimes your job is to be wrong.
For sure.
And so, like, I don't know, I think that's really important in your role, like, you have to.
For sure, and, I think that's how our generation is gonna be defined. Can we have civil discourse?
Yeah.
Can are we actually after objective truth if such a thing exists? Which I know you and I believe that exists.
Right.
Somebody, who's a postmodernist or maybe a nihilist may disagree with me, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about it. My fear, and what I think we've been living in the past few years, past decade or two, is this religious fervor that has become politics.
Mhm.
People are treating politics like religion, they're treating it like their God. And when you do that, when you turn it into your whole identity, if I'm debating you, you view it as me critiquing your entire existence.
Right.
And that's a really big problem in my opinion, and I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah.
And I think we need to understand these opinions, we may have them, but they're sort of fluid, like they could change, and I would hope they may change because we're after objective truth. And if objective truth exists, that means there's a solid baseline that's unchanging.
Totally.
And no matter what you or I believe on that fact, if such a thing exists, that's what's gonna be true. That's what's gonna reign true.
And I think most people feel exactly like that. I
Yep.
don't think that it's, oh, 90% of the American population is one side or the other or whatever. No, I think for the most part, I mean, we see it here on campus. Like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we all just want what's best for UT. I
Uh-huh.
do believe that. And like, whether it's the president of the United States or the governor of Texas or whoever it is, right, left, purple, I don't care. I just want them to do the best that they can do,
Yep.
right? Like, did I vote for Joe Biden? No. But, like, did I want him to, like, do well?
Mhm.
Duh, because I love America. So, like,
Yeah, for sure.
like, of course,
For sure.
I want him to do well. I want you to do well. You know what I mean? Like, I want if you're in a position of power, then it's your responsibility to, like, do the best that you can.
For sure.
And so I've
And
done that.
I appreciate that, and I think there's definitely something to be said. What I've realized is, as a leader, you can only really gain so many variables when you're making a decision.
Yeah.
Everybody's operating from limited understanding and limited information.
Right.
And so I think there's something to be said of giving people grace. That's not to say that, if somebody makes multiple wrong errors, that we don't call them out on it.
For sure.
But, I think it is to be said that we need to maybe as a society have a little bit more grace for people.
Yeah. I think anyone who's been a part of an excellent culture understands that
Yep.
because, for me on the basketball side of things, obviously had a lot of success there. I can't even count the number of disagreements that we had in the locker room
For sure, I would
on
imagine.
on anything. And so it's what play are we gonna run? This assistant coach versus that assistant coach and their viewpoints and
Yep.
how we should run practice and, how we should schedule this game and like, how much film we should watch and, "Oh, we should focus more on offense or more on defense this game."
Yep.
Just so many, like, little disagreements,
Yep.
um, that if you're if you've never been in an environment where you have to, like, talk things out and debate things and figure it out for, like, the common good, if you've never been in that environment, then you can't possibly translate it because it's just too new for you.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so luckily, I think both of us have been in those environments before. It's not new for us. Your job is a lot harder than me as a student, and so
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I think
that
everybody has different challenges.
well, you're a nicer guy, than I am. Like,
I don't know if I'd say that.
I mean,
You're very nice.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'm nice to you. Yeah, no, I'm a nice guy, but I think, you can. It's not wrong to say, "I hate your ideas, but I love you."
Yeah, yeah.
I hate your ideas, but I love you. I think if more people just got a grip on saying that,
Yep.
then like, cool. Then all we're debating is ideas, not personal identity.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to some people view those ideas like they are their personal identity.
Yeah.
And
Let's
that's where it becomes challenging, where you have to really navigate it delicately. And each and every person is so different.
right.
Your personality is such a way that probably could do that to you. Some people's not so much that way. So you just have to change. Sometimes you have to change the tone and change how you approach it.
For sure. Totally agree, man. What do you think is next for UT? What do you think kind of the next steps are? Obviously, you're about to get out of here and everything
Yep.
like that. And so what are some of the things that you see on the horizon for the university?
Yeah, no, I love the question. I think, there's a few things. I think UT really is sort of at the forefront of higher educational changes. I think it's at that position for a few reasons. Number one, I think the state of Texas right now really is the preeminent state in the union, and not in a biased way. Again,
Amen.
I come from an outside perspective, so I do feel that that is the case. I think the data supports that. It really is a rocket ship taking off right now with the amount of companies coming in, the amount of entrepreneurship, innovation happening in the state. So because we are the preeminent public education institution of the state of Texas, that puts us in the spotlight. And I think on the federal side, the federal government's really seeing us and watching what we're doing. You mentioned the compact.
Mm.
That's the reason why we were in that.
Yeah.
If you notice who the members of that compact were, is basically us, one or two other state institutions, in a list of very prominent private institutions. Right. I think there's no mistake about that, why we're in that. So, I think to answer your question, I think in the landscape of higher education, I think it's changing a lot with AI, with all these things. I think people are watching what we're doing. I think they're going to see, okay, how can this university make sure that higher education doesn't become obsolete with AI? I think that's the central crux of the issue. What are we teaching our students? Are we teaching them just skills? Are we teaching them to be interdisciplinary? Are we teaching them the humanities? Does something like the humanities have a value add to students, or is it obsolete? These are the kind of questions that the university is navigating. They're currently changing the core curriculum structure of the university, which I think is going to have huge impacts on the future student experience at UT. I think additionally, job placement, everybody's going to be looking at that. If you can bypass university, many people probably will, because of the path of least resistance. If universities can showcase that what you get here is fundamentally going to set you up for success in the future, people are going to keep coming. So I think university administrators, both on the Texas front and nationally, are really grappling with that question. How do we do that? And then I think finally, I'm going to be curious to see how job pipelines based on sectors really flourish or diminish here at UT. Investment banking is a perfect example of that. We have quite literally joined the highest echelons of pipeline tracks to the top firms
Yeah.
in New York. If you look at us 5 years ago, we weren't doing that. Now we're getting Goldman, JP Morgan, etc. I'm going to be curious, where does that trajectory continue, or does it flatten or plateau? What happens with that? And so I think all those variables I'm going to be really curious to see. But across the board, I'm extremely bullish on UT. I think this is the institution to be at. It's only going to continue to accelerate, in my opinion.
Yeah. And of course, getting us a national championship in football. That's that too.
I love to.
For
Yep,
sure, man.
yep, that'll help.
Um, Hudson, appreciate you coming on, dude.
Thanks so
This
much.
has been a lot of fun. I'm very honored to be a friend of yours, and very honored to have you on the show, man.
Likewise,
Thanks.
it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
I
sir.
agree. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.